As a members' business debate on motion 9389, name of Monica Lennon, on alcohol and drug-related deaths. This debate will be concluded without any questions being put. Can I ask those members who wish to speak in the debate to press the request to speak buttons now? I would also have to tell you this debate must conclude by 2 o'clock, so I'm going to give warning to the 3 final speakers that Neil Findlay, Fulton McGregor and Michelle Ballantyne. I may have to cut your speeches to 3 minutes, and also say to the Minister we have to conclude on 2 as the Parliament's business begins then. Right, I call Monica Lennon to open the debate, please. 7 minutes, Ms Lennon.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Back in September, when I raised with the First Minister the worrying increase in the number of people dying as a result of alcohol and drugs harm, I wanted to draw particular attention to the issue of stigma. Stigma stops people from getting the support they need and is costing people their lives. And stigma is also harming the families who are affected by substance misuse. Today, we have an opportunity to agree that we need to do much more to change attitudes and develop a new national conversation on drugs and alcohol. We must work together to achieve this. Stigma stops us from having honest conversations with family, friends and colleagues about alcohol and drugs harm. Language contributes to this. Labels like alky and JK and junkie, which dehumanise people. TV characters like Methadone Mick poke fun at some of the most vulnerable people in our communities. People with underlying mental health problems. People who are likely to have experienced trauma, neglect or abuse. I grew up watching Rab C. Nesbitt on BBC Scotland. Rab is best known as the string-vested alcoholic layabout, who is the central character in what the BBC website describes as Glasgow's greatest ever sitcom. His illustrious CV, according to the BBC, includes work-shy slob and all-round nutter. Rab and James A. Cotter and their working-class bampottery gave us the impression that drinking to excess was a lifestyle choice, and certainly not one that the middle class would make. We even had Rab C. Nesbitt Christmas specials. Losing my own dad to alcohol harm in 2015 has perhaps tempered my sense of humour, but today I don't feel much like laughing along with snooty, class-based prejudice dressed up as entertainment. Perhaps it's because I felt the suffocation of stigma, that cloak of shame that stops people from accessing treatment and support or walking through the door of Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous or any 12-step programme. Or because I know that stigma hurts the people who are affected by the harmful drinking or drugs use of a loved one. I asked people affected by alcohol or drugs harm to get in touch and to share their stories with me. I was especially struck by the testimony of Alan Brady, who grew up in Easterhouse with an alcoholic father. Alan was a traumatised youngster. He witnessed violence and chaos that no young person should ever see. Later in life, in fact quite recently, Alan wrote a play based on his experiences, and he discovered that many of his childhood friends had gone through much of the same, but none of them had talked about it. Alan is a proud member of Al-Anon, and he has welcomed this debate today because he says it's often worse for the families of alcoholics, and especially for children. We are all well briefed on the statistics and the facts. 1,265 alcohol deaths and 867 to drugs in 2016 alone. It's a combined cost of £3.6 billion a year to the Scottish economy in dealing with the harmful effects of drinking. But it's the very human costs of these cold, hard facts which can be harder to convey. For every person who remains in the grip of alcohol or drugs harm, there are countless individuals, families and friends affected. Alan put it perfectly when he said, "There are women and men in Scotland today going to their work, going to the shops, trying to hold families together with their hearts blazing and their heads screaming." This has to change because people need to feel able to talk and to know that they'll not be laughed at. That's why I believe that we urgently need a national conversation about the role of drugs and alcohol in our society. I've already raised this issue with the Scottish Government, and in regards to a national information campaign, and I look forward to exploring this when I meet with the Public Health Minister in the new year. For it is estimated that 51,000 children in Scotland today are affected by a parent's harmful drinking. Dr Catherine Calderwood, Scotland's Chief Medical Officer, writing in the Sunday Post in October, said, "Those affected by parental substance misuse are among the most vulnerable in society, and they need particular care and support." The Chief Medical Officer is correct. Cross-departmental working is vital, and I'm pleased that the Children and Young People's Minister is here today. And I urge the Scottish Government to make this an urgent priority and to use the upcoming Child and Young Person Wellbeing Strategy and the 2018 Year of the Young Person to mainstream these issues of alcohol and drugs harm on young people. It's 5 days until Christmas, and at this time of year, it's human nature to want to be in the company of the people you love and the people who love you back. But if you're a child affected by alcohol or drugs harm without the sanctuary of school, the festive season can be lonely and it can be scary. A focus on young people and the families affected by alcohol and drugs misuse has to be central to the forthcoming strategy refresh. Giving support to those affected by substance misuse is vital to breaking this cycle of misery. During the lifetime of the Scottish Government's 2008 alcohol strategy and 2009 drug strategy, 15,077 people have died from substance misuse. And I've been trying to put that 15,000 number into context, and that's the equivalent to the entire population of Larkhall, one of the towns that I represent. If we continue at this rate, in 10 years' time, by 2027, the population equivalent of another significant town will have been wiped out too. That amounts to a national crisis. So, of course, I welcome the policy refresh that's underway, but when 15,000 people have died during the course of the current strategies, we have to be brutally honest that it's not simply a refresh that's required, it's time for a reality check. But I am optimistic we can start to change this, and I'm very grateful to MSPs of all parties who have signed the motion to make this debate possible. And I want to thank the many individuals and organisations who provided briefings and all the organisations who are holding people up. I won't name you all because I'm watching the clock. And I want to conclude, Presiding Officer, by extending a heartfelt thank you to members of the public in the gallery who've travelled from various parts of Scotland, and to everyone who's shared their stories with me. If you have recently lost a loved one due to drugs or alcohol harm, I realise this will be a very challenging time for you. Those of us who have lived through it understand, and I pray you will find comfort and peace this Christmas. You are at the heart of this debate, and if we listen and act on what we learn from you about alcohol and drugs harm, I believe we can set Scotland on a journey of radical culture change. Change that is urgent, necessary and possible.
Thank you. I'm sorry to hurry people, but as I say, time is pressing.